Hi, welcome to episode 36 of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. First off, I want to apologize. I'm on the road. I'm in the process of moving to another state, so no comic wall behind me. I know the video quality is not the best. The sound may not be, but you'll just have to bear with me. So the big news in comics this week, obviously, was the controversy over the cover for Batgirl 41. It was drawn by Raphael Albuquerque, and as you can see from the image, it's a little disturbing. Some people felt that it was over the top, too much sexual implication or innuendo, if you will. I personally didn't see it. I do, however, agree that it doesn't suit the current tone of the Batgirl book. That being said, it was a variant cover, so I didn't feel it was terrible. However, the creative team on the book didn't like it. At the end of the day, Raphael Albuquerque actually asked DC to pull the cover. I don't know that you could call it censorship. I mean, the cover's out there all over the place for anybody to see who wants it. So smarter people than me can make decisions about this. I'm not going to form an opinion whether DC is right or wrong, whether Albuquerque was right or wrong, and whether it's really censorship. Read all the information. It's out there on the internet. You can read it all and form your own opinion. For myself, I don't know. It's a complicated situation. I can understand the arguments from both sides, and I just hope that in the future DC can avoid these controversies by having their promotions department, who are the ones who commission these variant covers, work a little more closely with the editorial side, and then they wouldn't have these problems. Alright, so there's a lot of final issues coming out this month from DC, and that's going to continue with the books I'm going to cover this week. The first book I'm going to talk about is Green Lantern New Guardians, issue 40, the finale for the series. It's written by Justin Jordan. The art is handled by Diogenes Neves on pencils, Mark Deering on inks, and Will Quintana on the colors. This was a pretty enjoyable issue, kind of the finale of Kyle Rayner as the White Lantern. And what's interesting is we know that going forward in June that Kyle Rayner is going to be dead. He's going to have been killed at the hands of the Omega Men. So I wasn't sure if this issue was going to set that up or if we were actually going to see the death in this issue. We didn't. It kind of left Kyle Rayner kind of off on his own, still a White Lantern, but not quite as powerful as he had been due to some choices and things he had to do in order to preserve the universe. So I thought it was a very good story, and I would be very interested in seeing where Justin Jordan, the writer, would go from here. So it very much left things up in the air, knowing that this title is not going to continue. So hopefully in June we get some answers when we see that Kyle Rayner's dead, and perhaps this storyline can be revisited later down the road. The art I thought was adequate. I miss Brad Walker on the book, to be honest. He's a really great artist. I really enjoy his work. As I said, the art was adequate. It wasn't terrible. Didn't blow me away. The colors were pretty good, and I would say that the entire run of Green Lantern New Guardians is definitely worth reading, so go out there and pick it up. It's not a super popular series, so I'm sure you can pick up the whole series relatively cheaply. And we know that when June rolls around, there's going to be a lot fewer Green Lantern books, and this is one I'm definitely going to miss. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about isn't a series finale, but it is a finale of sorts. It's the end of the first arc for the new creative team on Batgirl that's been super popular. That is Cameron Stewart and Brendan Fletcher writing, Babs Tartt handling the art, and Maris Wicks on colors. This issue didn't go the way I expected it to. Those that have been following Batgirl know that at the end of last issue, we discovered there were basically two Batgirls, one out in the real DC universe and one kind of in the digital universe of the DC universe. And with Secret Origins 10 that came out the following week, we learned how there came to be a digital version of Barbara Gordon. Well, this issue kind of ties it all up. And I have to admit that I didn't care much for the climax. It's kind of an overused cliche. It was used in War Games for the finale of that movie way back in 1983, so it certainly wasn't original. I was hoping and honestly expecting a little more from the creative team on this book. They've done such a great job so far. That being said, it definitely gave Barbara Gordon a new status quo moving forward, and we also may have seen a new version of Oracle in the DC universe going forward. I honestly expected the digital Barbara Gordon to become the new Oracle, and that certainly isn't going to happen. So, as I said, it's the finale for the first arc of this new creative team. It's definitely a very popular book, popular with young women, and despite the controversy for the cover of issue 41, I expect this series to continue to grow in popularity, so if you wonder what you're missing, go ahead and pick up this issue. Even though it's the finale of the first arc, it is a good jumping on point, or perhaps wait a few weeks till the trade for the first arc comes out, and you can see just why everyone's talking about Batgirl these days. The next book I'm going to talk about is Bucky Barnes Winter Soldier #6 from Marvel. This book was written by C.O.W.L with art by Marco Rudy and Langdon Foss, and colors were by Jordan Boyd. Bucky Barnes Winter Soldier has been a very interesting book, and not necessarily in a good way for Marvel. He seems to me to work better as kind of a down and dirty, street-level hero, and the story that C.O.W.L has been telling is really fantastical. Other worlds, alien worlds, other dimensions, different versions of Bucky Barnes, and for me it just doesn't suit the character. It just doesn't work. As I said, I feel he works best when he's grounded in reality, and I don't know if we'll look back on this and think of it as something that was ahead of its time, or perhaps flew under the radar but was actually a lot better than we expected it to be. C.O.W.L is a good writer, and I feel like this could be a good story if it was told with somebody else, maybe Star-Lord perhaps, or even the Cyclops or one of the X-Men. But for me, Bucky Barnes, it just doesn't work. And it's kind of disappointing because, as I said, C.O.W.L is a great writer. A little bit about the art, it's very inconsistent for me. That may be on purpose. As I said, different realities and different flashbacks, and so the book kind of jumps around a little. But that being said, the art is just very inconsistent. At times it looks spectacular, and other times it just fails to tell the story properly or convey the kind of emotion. Winter Soldier is such a great character, and I feel like, especially with the popularity of Captain America 2, that Marvel really needs to be putting out a awesome Winter Soldier book that fans of the movie can pick up and understand. And I just feel like this book is not new reader friendly at all, and it's really a misstep by Marvel. In contrast to that, Moon Knight #13 is definitely a home run. This is the first issue from the new creative team of Cullen Bunn writing, Ron Atkins on pencils, Tom Palmer on inks, and Dan Brown on colors. Let me talk about the art first. I miss having Jordi Belair on the colors. She's such a great color artist. And Dan Brown does a good job, but the book's a little brighter than we've seen Moon Knight be up to this point. Perhaps they just felt it suited Ron Atkins' pencils a little better. I'd say for the first time since this new Moon Knight series has started, we actually get a real good look at Mark Spector, not just in his Moon Knight persona. So that has a way of almost pulling you out of the story a little bit. The series to this point has been so dark and supernatural in feel that this book is definitely a step away from that. That being said, I did enjoy Ron Atkins' art. I thought Tom Palmer did a good job on the colors. It just wasn't quite as spooky, I guess would be the word. And, Cullen Bunn, while a great writer, again, it wasn't the seamless transition from Warren Ellis to Brian Wood. The transition from Brian Wood to Cullen Bunn was much more evident. That being said, it was a fun story. I enjoyed it. I would hope that Cullen Bunn does go a little more into the supernatural. And that's not to say that the story didn't have its supernatural elements, but it felt like a Moon Knight story that happened to be supernatural rather than a Moon Knight story where he is supernatural by nature, as the book has felt to me to this point. But as I said, it was a great story. I'm a big fan of Cullen Bunn, and I'm interested to see where Moon Knight goes from here. I think it's one of the best titles Marvel's putting out these days, so if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend picking it up. Now the next book I'm going to talk about, I kind of picked up on a whim. It's from IDW, and it's The Fly, Outbreak. This book was written by Brandon Seifert, and the art is by Minton 3. Now, when I say The Fly, I'm talking about the old Vincent Price movie from the 60s, or maybe a lot of you are more familiar with the version that came out in the 80s starring Jeff Goldblum. And there was also a sequel in the late 80s or early 90s starring Eric Stoltz. I never actually saw The Fly 2 with Eric Stoltz, but I was a big fan of the Jeff Goldblum version. But this book is much more about that sequel that I talked about. Although I haven't seen it, I know that it stars Eric Stoltz as the son of Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis from the first Fly movie, and he's kind of working for some think tank in the movie. Well, that's where this book is set. He's working for a think tank. He clearly is aware that he has some genetic abnormalities, and that kind of colors his relationship with his wife or girlfriend. And he's definitely brilliant. He's definitely in high demand at the think tank. Just about every scientist there wants help from him on their particular projects. The book is creepy. The art by Minton 3 sets the mood extremely well. It's very suitable for the book. This book was very enjoyable. If I had any complaint about it, the first half of the book and the second half of the book are a little bit choppy. It was hard for me to understand if I was seeing a flashback in the second half of the book, or if it started as a flashback and then it moved back to present time. I'm sure it will be evident when the second issue comes out. I just wish that had been made a little more clear. But as I said, I picked it up on a whim. It was very enjoyable. If you're a fan of the Fly movie, either 1 or 2, or maybe even the old school Vincent Price, I'd say pick it up. If you're a fan of just creepy horror, I'd say pick it up. The art by Minton 3, as I said, is sufficiently dark and spooky, and he does a great job of rendering kind of the monstrous look of the Fly human hybrid creatures in the book. So IDW, The Fly Outbreak 1, surprisingly good. Give it a try. Now on to my book of the week for this week from Image Comics. It's C.O.W.L number 9, written by Kyle Higgins and Alex Siegel, with art by Rod Rice. Again, Kyle Higgins and Alex Siegel are just knocking it out of the park with C.O.W.L. For those of you not familiar with it, C.O.W.L stands for the Chicago Organized Worker League. It's basically set in the 60s, and it's about some superheroes that have formed a union, and they're selling their services to the city of Chicago. So it's very much a political book. Think of it almost as Mad Men crossed with superheroes, but I feel like it's so much more than that. The characterization by Kyle and Alec is just spot on. These heroes are very believable. It does a good job of capturing the turbulent feel of the 60s. Rod Rice's art is very good at feeling dated. And when I say dated, I don't mean in a bad way. It does a very good job of capturing that feel of the 60s. You definitely feel like you're looking back into the past. So as I mentioned, it's a kind of a political book, and this issue definitely steered more toward the political side with some maneuverings and character interaction. There was a lot of action right at the end, and there are going to be some serious consequences coming up in issue 10 because of those actions, so I'm anxious to see what happens next. This book's flying a little bit under the radar. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, but everyone I know that reads it loves it. So do yourself a favor, go out there, pick up C.O.W.L. It's one of the best books being put out today. I know I say that a lot, but you can really feel that Kyle Higgins and Alex Siegel, this is their creator-owned project, this is their passion, this is what they want to do more than anything else, and it really shows. Just a great, great, great book. Okay, let me run down the list real fast of a few other books that came out this week. Red Hood and the Outlaws number 40 is the finale of that series, written by C.O.W.L. Great art by Tom Denerick, inks by Sean Parsons, and colors by the Horries. This was a satisfying end to the Red Hood and the Outlaws book. We know that Starfire is kind of going out on her own in a title starting in June by Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner. At the end of this story, we saw Roy Harper, or Red Arrow, or Arsenal, or whatever name he's going by these days, and Red Hood kind of go their separate ways. But we also know that in June, they're going to have a buddy book that starts back up. So it'll be interesting to see how they meet back up after the events of this book. I also want to mention Superman 39, written by Jeff Johns with art by John Romita Jr. and Klaus Janson, and colors by Hi-Fi. This was almost one of those throwback to the 80s day in the life of. We know that Superman revealed his identity to Jimmy Olsen at the end of issue 38, and this issue picks up right where that one left off. Superman is powerless because of the use of his newfound super flare or solar flare power, but we see that it's a lot more than just his powers that make him Superman. So an enjoyable read, very much a character piece, and Jeff Johns is a great writer, and he shows it here in this issue. The next book I'll mention is Princess Leia number 2, written by Mark Waid, with art by the Dodsons and colors by Jordi Belair. Again, Jordi Belair shows what a great color artist she is. The colors in this book are the highlight of the art for me. Normally I'm a big fan of Terry Dodson, but this book is a lot rougher than his art normally is, and I just don't care for it as much as his more clean style. That being said, Mark Waid is definitely highlighting what a hero Princess Leia is, and if you're a fan of Princess Leia or you just like reading stories about strong female characters, I would say definitely pick this up. Also from Marvel, Hulk 13, written by Jerry Dugan, with pencils by Mark Bagley, inks by Drew Hennessy, and colors by Jason Keith, was, again, a really great read. Hulk is up there with Moon Knight for me as my favorite Marvel titles being put out today. Jerry Dugan is just killing it. Mark Bagley's art, he's really come around to finding his feel on the book, and he does a great job of making the Hulk seem both intelligent and formidable. So if you haven't been reading Hulk, you definitely need to pick it up. It's a great, great story that's going on right now, and I really have no idea where it's going to go next. Jerry Dugan is really an underrated writer. He's got so many twists and turns and keeps it exciting, and you just don't know what's going to happen next. The Hulk's really in a bad position. He put himself there. He made his bed, and now he has to lie in it, and it really could have some repercussions for the Marvel Universe as a whole going forward. Also from Marvel, Silk #2 came out, written by Robbie Thompson with art by Stacey Lee and colors by Ian Herring. This issue was so vastly superior from issue 1, it almost felt like it must be a new creative team, but it was the exact same creative team. The corny jokes were gone, the art was a little cleaner, and I definitely feel like this was the better of the second issues between Spider-Gwen and Silk. Spider-Gwen I felt had a better first issue, whereas the second issue, Silk, was clearly better. I don't know how much longer I'll keep reading it, but based on the strength of this issue, I'll definitely pick up the next one. Also a second issue that came out was Divinity from Valiant Comics. This book was written by Matt Kindt. The pencils were by Trevor Hairsine. The inks were by Ryan Wynn, and the colors were by David Barron. This issue was much more down-to-earth than the first one. As I said when I reviewed Divinity 1, I expected it to feel a little more cosmic, but despite that, we definitely got a feel for how powerful the main character is in this book, and we certainly see in the second issue that the main character is going to have a profound effect on the Valiant universe. So with only 2 issues left, it's going to be interesting to see how Matt Kindt ties all these threads together. Also from Valiant Comics, Ivar Time Walker #3, written by Fred Van Lente with art by Clayton Henry, Bit, and colors by Brian Reber and Andrew Dahlhaus, came out this last Wednesday. This continues to be a really fun book. Fred Van Lente, as I've said before when I talked about previous Ivar Time Walker issues or his run on Archer and Armstrong, there's nobody better at doing history or alternate history or conspiracy theories from history than Fred Van Lente. He does such a great job of reaching back and pulling these actual events and then spinning them to make you think about, wow, could that really have happened, or what if it had happened that way? The art by Clayton Henry and the rest of these guys on the book is spectacular. Continues to be a very fun book. Witty dialogue, very funny, beautiful rendering, clean lines, great storytelling from Clayton Henry. Just a real solid book. Another great title being put out by Valiant. And finally, the last book I'm going to mention is from Top Cow. It's Witchblade 181, written by David Hine with art by Laura Braga. This is the part 2 of the death of Jackie Estacado, so basically the end of the darkness in the Top Cow universe, I guess. So that's definitely a milestone for Top Cow and their Artifact universe. So once again, I want to thank everyone for watching. Again, I apologize for this video being a little late, being that I'm on the road. Be sure and join me next time for the spotlight on the small press publisher Dark Planet Comics. I'll see you then.